Hey, okay, so it's getting a little late. We'll see how the light goes. Haven't done it one of this time of night. Uh, I just a few questions have come up lately, and in conversations, and I thought I'd take an opportunity to answer some. So let's just talk about it. Let's see what's going on. The first one actually comes from a friend of mine, Althea, and I kind of like it. It's a decent one. What we got? So our question was, how do you live so that when you look back on your life, you can smile? Well, honestly, I think starting with, can you live today and look back on your day and smile? I, I have a core belief that being actively engaged in life is how you make a meaningful one. And by that I mean, when you're face to face with what to do on a Saturday, if you're spending it all day um, in front of a television just watching, the news and everything else, it's like, what do you do with your time? Do you take your time being actively engaged with other people? Are you actively out and investing your time in others? Are you investing your time in something that you're building or something that you're producing? It's that question of, are you investing your time, or are you just biding your time? And I think that, so many things that I deal with really do depend on perspective. They depend on you having a certain mental construct in place, a certain way of thinking, a certain mindset. And if you have the right mindset, then it changes the entire paradigm of what we've got going on. And really, I don't know if people are really thinking about that, whether that's something that they're actually engaged in. I've had a lot of conversations today. I woke up this morning to somebody sending me uh, one of those, a petition to sign on a political issue, and so I had to go and research the political issue to find out how I felt about it, and find out that the standard thing of oversimplification of the problem and what's going on. I'm not going to get into the specifics of it, but I got a really shiny forehead. Anyway, um, so I started with that, and I started with a day where I had to go and question something and find out what was going on, and there's there's the modern language, the modern view is so pessimistic and so negative, and so looking at all of the things that are wrong in the world. And when it looks at them, it's almost just like there's this wringing of hands that says, "Oh, isn't that a terrible thing?" And maybe if we're sympathetic to it, then that can help ease the wrongness of it. And the reality is, sympathy does very little productive in a world. And I don't know anybody who would, or I wouldn't look back on my life and say, well, at least I was sympathetic to all of these causes and all of these things that happen, whether they're, no matter what side of the political spectrum you're on. Sympathy to a cause is not going to actually do anything. And it's not going to yield an outcome other than maybe feeling good in a moment with a small shot in the arm of compassion. Actually, not even compassion, because it's more like self sedating in its nature. It's the challenge I have with things like Twitter and things like where we can, thumb up a cause or anything else like that. It's a show of support, sure, it is, in a very convenient and easy way, and it allows people to inoculate themselves against discomfort. But if you want your life to mean something, if you want your life to have been something, you're going to have to go get uncomfortable. And I think that the part of the way of going about getting meaning and getting purpose is to put yourself in harm's way a little bit, to take responsibilities seriously, and to aspire. Now, this is really hard to do in certain conditions, in certain contexts. This is really hard to do when you're in misery. There was a line that in the reading from Albert Pike, it said that the two forces that keep the worst parts of humanity in play are ignorance and misery. And in that if you are ignorant, if you do not engage the intellect, you will be condemned to live a life of fear. You'll be condemned to live a life of reactionary engagement, of responsive, of some kind of reactionary nature where you don't get to control the outcome of the world. It just gets dictated to you. And the other one is misery. If you are in pain, if you are hurting, if you are suffering, it's going to be very difficult to be in a position to actively engage in something better, in something meaningful, in something powerful. It's hard to do that when you're in pain. It's hard to do that when you're suffering. It's hard to do that when you're in hardship. It's hard to do that when you're struggling. When we struggle, we end up struggling. It's what we do. And so we need to find a path out of misery and a path out of ignorance. And for me, fortunately, and for almost everyone I know, most of the miseries that we actually engage in are somewhat self-inflicted. And I don't mean that makes them any less or any less painful or any less difficult. It does mean, though, that we have some capability of engaging around them. There are countries, there are places, there are conditions in which that's not true, in which there is actually no control a person can have. But I don't happen to live in that environment. Most of the people I know don't live in that environment. And almost everyone I know that is hurting does get some say in it, does get some say in how much they choose to hurt. I'm not saying they get to completely ignore it, they get to completely decide it, but if you get some say, then you have a foothold in which you can then grab hold and start changing that about yourself. Now, for anyone watching this or listening to this or doing anything with this, honestly, there is no challenge for ignorance. The world of technology now has made it so that information is easily available. So go and find what information is important. Now, that's a little trickier. That requires an art form. But the information that you need, there's no reason for you to be ignorant. There is no reason for you not to know what would be useful for you. So if something is causing difficulty, if something is causing strain, if something is causing pressure, if something is making you feel as though your life is not in your control, if something is making you feel as though someone else has complete dominion over you, then the two things that are is, number one, find a path out of pain, even if it's just for a moment, and educate yourself. Find your information, whether that's listening to podcasts and live streams and YouTube or whatever, whether that's reading books. I mean, books are a great source, obviously, or just doing research and finding things, or asking friends, or doing anything you can do to get the information that you need will make it so that you're working on a playing field that's not driven by negative or negation. When you live a life that isn't driven by the negatives, it's easy to get bored. And this is something that I think is wonderful, because I would be very curious to see how much of the greatest engagements in life are because somebody was bored on a Saturday night. It's actually one of the challenges I have with the internet. Now I'm spending all day on it with the, with these podcasts and whatnot, and that's it's a hell of a way to spend a day. But by the end of the day, I'm done. I don't want to be on it anymore. So I want to go. I want to go do something. And going out and talking to people, being engaged with other people, is fueling my mind and my engagement in my world. So, that said, get out of misery, get out of ignorance, so that you can be free. When you're free, then take the opportunity to dream. Take the opportunity to desire. And then pick something and be willing to work a little bit for it. Be willing to work hard. Be willing to give more than is convenient to it. And the results of this end up becoming the stories, the adventures, the causes, the insights, the loves, the triumphs, these things that we aspire to. These great adventures are usually overcoming challenges, are overcoming moments. Those are the ones that are the most successful. Those are the ones that are the most interesting. I have lived a life that I'm tickled with, absolutely tickled with. From the time that I was living in a Pontiac Fiero because I was too stupid when I went to college the first time and spent more time with the girls than with the books. My 4 years in the Army, the magic of that. My time after the Army, living with my grandmother for a year, where I got to learn things about my family and things about her and things about the world from 40 years, 50 years earlier that I never could have imagined. Working in trucking and seeing how the whole world's transportation industry worked in that decade. And understanding the trials and tribulations of what it takes to move things, to bear witness to the industry of my state. It was miraculous, and it introduced me to computers, which got me introduced to programming. And the schooling that I took out of the Army, I took classes, I got that, got fired from the trucking company, ended up in one of the largest software companies in the world, keeping a world safe and secure. Meanwhile, inventing new technology, coming up with new ways to do things, being on the cutting edge of such a meaningful fight. Also, playing games with people in the early days of gaming when it wasn't the industry and the world that it is now, where it wasn't the game we played, but we had an internal server in the office. And after it was done, we would all get together we would play for an hour on a Quake server, I think, and then we would go out and we would talk and share and laugh and be engaged in these competitions, these playful competitions. The challenges that I had to overcome, the weekends that I spent slaving away, the friend who invited me to Renaissance Fair, which started an almost 20-year love affair with history, with 16th century Germany, that became a love of the use of the sword. I mean, I've loved playing with swords since I was 6, and I have made a life, actually, of learning how to use one based on historical techniques and trying to reverse engineer what that was. And then going and doing work for the History Channel. I mean, who would have thought? And becoming a fight choreographer for a movie that never saw the light of day. But, man, has some great photos. These are all things that I've done because I wasn't worried. I wasn't spending my time being afraid. I wasn't spending my time being in pain. And being in pain sucks a lot. And it doesn't let us think straight. And it doesn't let us bring our best to the world. So, find your way through it. Find your way to solve it. And again, if you can find any way that is in your control, any small piece that's in your control, and then take that, own that, and use that to be your springboard to build in and to drive, then that'll work. I mean, ignorance is just something you just overcome. Start reading. And I don't mean reading the trash. I mean, read stuff that matters. Read stuff that's interesting. Look, there's a whole world of books out there. There's a whole world of information out there. Find something that's educational and interesting. Or learn a craft, learn a hobby, learn a talent, learn a skill. There's so much available out there now. There really is no excuse. And when you have removed the hardship and you then have time to yourself, time to reflect, time to think, time to just be, I think the inspiration for new things to do will find itself in you. I don't know anyone who remains bored for long. And then you'll get engaged. And when you engage in life, that's when you start making the memories. When you engage in life personally, that's when you make the memories that are going to last. So, get engaged. And that's how. That'll work for that one. Okay, next question. How are we doing? All right. Is it possible to transform self-kindness and gentleness into strength? You know, this is a really interesting question because, and this one came, I don't remember who it is. I might need some help on remembering that. If anybody's in the chat who remembers who came up with this question, it'd be great. Teddy, it'd be good to know. Is it possible to transform self-kindness and gentleness into strength? The hard part about this is it comes from a false notion. There's a lot of questions like, what does self-kindness mean? What are you referring to as gentleness? What are we referring to as strength? So I'm going to kind of take those up because then there's the implied paradigm that gentleness and strength are somehow mutually exclusive and self-kindness and strength are somehow mutually exclusive. First, I want to start with strength. What does strength mean? When people talk about strength in this kind of question, in my experience, it's generally a commentary of, it's a feeling, it's an emotion. Strength is a way you feel when you are able to impact the world around you, when you're able to move something, when you're able to influence something, when you're able to do them. These are all strength. Generally is the byproduct of the confidence of absolute knowledge that you have the capability, that you are empowered and able to do this. And that is the sensation of being strong. There are people who struggle and try things so hard to feel this way. But the reality is, it is the exact opposite of disempowerment. It's the exact opposite of futility. It is the feeling that you can, and that you are able to engage and to take on and to win the challenge. And so transforming things into strength means I'm transforming the question a bit. Can gentleness be a source of this sensation? And can self-kindness be a source of this emotion, this sensation? And first, there's the question of are they related? Well, it's very, very hard to feel empowered and able to influence your world from a place of helplessness, whether it's learned or enforced. And so, if you are being, if you are continuing to keep yourself in a helpless paradigm, if you are continuing to keep yourself from doing things, then self-kindness would be to allow yourself to do things, allow yourself to experience that, allow yourself to become capable. And in that form, if self-kindness is removing the barriers that you put upon yourself, then yeah, self-kindness is definitely a source of strength. Because the self-harm or the self-unkindness you're doing is keeping you weak. It's not a case of that strength comes from being self-kind. It's that if you're asking this question, then my question is, are you not self-kind? Are you not being kind to yourself by default? Is that not your natural operation in life? Because self-kindness is one of the ways that we preserve ourselves. It's one of the ways that we keep ourselves safe and sane. Because when we're not safe and when we're not insane, then again, we move into that misery idea. And when we move into misery, now we're into helplessness. And helplessness is the very antithesis of strength, of the sensation of strength. So now the question I'm wondering is, why is self-kindness not the norm? And because the various frameworks and institutions that cause this arrangement where self-kindness is not the norm are probably the exact same ones that are keeping someone in a position of weakness or a position of helplessness. Again, the antithesis of the sensation of strength. Now, gentleness is strength. Now, this one is interesting because I've seen a lot of things on, this is one of those phrase a day calendar kind of things. I am strong because I am gentle, all these things, and gentleness and strength. Gentleness is definitely a source of strength when the gentleness is given freely and kindly to someone you don't have to. So gentleness is when it is a kindness, not done for any kind of debt, not done for any kind of exchange, not done expecting to get anything back in return. Just being done because you want to be gentle out of love. Freely given without any expectation of return and without any need for return. That's kind of valuable there. There are a lot of people who need return on their gentleness and their kindness. This is one of those cases where, no, we don't need return on this. And so, okay. When that's the case, it does give you a sensation of joy and of having done good and of having done something for someone and having changed or engaged or given someone something they didn't have. And this can be so close to a sensation of empowerment or capability that it is a quiet strength. And it's a quiet sensation of strength. So is it possible to transform self-kindness and gentleness into strength? No. Because self-kindness and gentleness are both manifestations of strength. Strength doesn't result from them. They come from strength. They come from being strong. They come from being empowered, capable. And that is how that works. So, kind of a reverse. One is not the effect of the other, one is the origin. Let's take a look at another one. What do we got? Oh, lights all over the thing. Camera's going back and forth, making adjustments. Good to know. I need to get a lighting system. All right. Oh, well. How about let's change that up a little bit. There we go. Do you think the default of humanity is to cower? Okay, this one I actually picked up from watching, there was an episode of the Rubin Report that I watched. And this question actually came up. Do you think the default of humanity is to cower? Do you think the default instance in humanity is to fear? Do I think that notion of withdrawal and hiding is the default of humanity? No, I do not. I think that cowering or that withdrawal is a result of being either in pain or is really actually mostly in that misery case. I think that this is one of those pieces where I think there's been a few behaviors that have been conditioned in my world, at least. One of the items that was conditioned in me from a very young age was proper behavior and etiquette and how to behave properly. And part of that, how to behave properly, is to not create conflict and strife, to not willfully argue and debate. My family does a lot of arguing and debating. I don't enjoy it. It's no fun for me. I don't get entertainment for it like some others in my family do. And so for me, I just learned that I don't need to bully. I don't need to press my opinions on others. I can. I'm certainly capable of it, and I have over a lifetime, no question. But I don't need to. And so when someone says something that I object with, I don't always have to say something negative about it. And I actually enjoy one aspect of looking at things from a kindness perspective. Is it kind? Is my response going to be a kindness to them? Am I going to be responding in a way that is going to just get us into a fight of contention? The conversation I had this morning over the political petition, I ended up just treating that conversation as an exploration of information. And I went to go and find out. I didn't agree with the premises that were being given to me. They sounded a little fallacious. And so I went and did the exploration. But I tried to do so with as kind a hand and as gentle a voice as I could. Because if I were doing something that I wanted, I would want the same kind of care and attention given to me. Meanwhile, I went and applied my capabilities. I became less ignorant. And then I understood the circumstance. And when I did, I expressed my findings, my view, to see what it could be and to see so that they would have that information, if that information would be valuable for them. But the thing about this politeness, though, is this politeness often defaults into silence. It's that notion of you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. That was very real in my upbringing 20, 25, 30 years ago. And now we've gotten to a point in some of our discourse and some of our interactions where the conversation is just getting really toxic. And that toxicity is being met with silence by polite people. And this is, I think, leading to a perception of cowardice. I think this is leading to a perception of timidness. And I don't believe that that is actually true. I think that somewhere in our ancient history, there was a human being looking out over the savannah, and it saw a lion. And it realized that that lion is going to kill them unless something gets done about it. And he grabbed hold of his spear, and he went down there, and he went to go take on that lion, and he died. And up on the branch, watching this whole event, were three other guys looking at each other and looking at that and going, well, that was dumb. But I think I have a better idea. And the second guy went down there, and he grabbed his spear, and he went out there, and he died. And then the third guy went, well, yeah, it's really bad, but they're just not as good as I am. And he went down there, same thing, and he died. And even then, the fourth guy still didn't run away. He went down there and he killed that lion. And he took it home to his family and they ate it. I think in our nature, we have the capability to be a bunch of bellicose bastards with too much ego and an arrogance of what we're capable of as individuals that it is just remarkable. And in that, I don't think cowering is really the thing. I think we have the potential to cower. And I think we have the potential for strength. And I think we have the potential to choose which we want to do. I think the default is to avoid misery, and then to aspire to kindness, in that order. And while we're in one, we can't do the other. And I think today, in a lot of our discourse and a lot of the conversations that are going on, where we used to learn to be kind by default, I think we're now learning to be in misery by default. And I would like to see us turn that around. I'd like to see that change, because I think it's entirely within our power to do so. And I think it just takes a few people motivating a few other people. One person looking over at somebody else who's struggling and reaching down, giving them a hand and pulling them up when it's needed from a place of strength. And so each person aspiring to create their place of strength and to come from a place of strength so that they have that capability to reach down and pick somebody else up. That's because somebody who had strength when you didn't reached down and picked you up. And I think that a cycle of this, a cycle of each climbing, of each reaching toward more and reaching down to help each other keep up, I think that's how some of the greatest things in human history have been achieved. The invention of the loom, because a husband wanted to spend more time with his wife and daughters. Before the loom, you used drop spindles or a distaff, and you would spin thread by hand, and that was what women did all day, because that was how you made enough thread for there to be something to weave. And he wanted to spend time. He didn't want his wife and his daughters doing that all day long, so he went to work on it, and he invented the spinning wheel. And suddenly, the household could come up with their quota of thread without having to do so much work, which allowed them more free time to spend time with each other and to enjoy each other's company. This is what humans do when they have time on their hands. First in misery, and then in kindness is where our focuses lie. I'd like us to kick the misery portion in the teeth. Get that stuff taken care of, at least for us individually, our own personal suffering. And for some people, that's going to be really hard. And they're going to need help. And they should be helped by friends, by family, by others, by church, by their community, by whatever. They should be helped. And they should get that help. And then when they're done, when they're in a place of strength themselves, they can return that favor. They can return that help. So no, I don't think the default of humanity is to cower. I think we fear misery. And when we're faced with misery, it causes us to respond to fear rather than what we're really capable of. Okay. Next one. With all that's going on, how can I keep on the straight and narrow of what is best for me and those I love? You know, I'm inspired by one thought here on this. Do you have a source of good? And I don't mean, I don't mean necessarily spiritual, religious, or getting into moral efficacy or anything. Goodness, just good. What is your source of good? Where do you find the meaning of good? Where do you find a place of good? What is your source of good? Because I think it's horribly critical that we have one. I think you need a reference outside yourself that guides you to make the right decision, to make the best decision, especially when you're in a place where the best decision may not be the best. Now, for some, this is their faith. For some, this is their philosophy. For some, this is their sense of right from their community. Whatever it is, know yours. Find a place that defines good for you. And I don't mean for you personally. I mean defines good, period, full stop. I think it has to be a community thing. I think it has to be so that we can hold each other accountable, so that we can look to each other and reach out of kindness and charity and say, my friend, be good. And that means something that we both understand and that we both share. The basic moral structure of a society is part of what holds a society together. And maybe you don't have a community definition of good. If you don't have that, and I admit they're getting harder and harder to find we're seeing things change and where we are looking at what's bad and we're just pointing fingers at the bad, but we're not looking at what the good is. So identify what your definition of good is and celebrate the good. Look to it, aspire to it, try to find it. Spend 2 weeks. I love 2 weeks as a time frame because 2 weeks is one of those time frames where it's longer than is comfortable. But spend 2 weeks where all you do is spend time being grateful, and this will show you what you think is good. Do a gratitude journal where every day, at the end of the day, you find 5 things to be grateful for that happened in that day and write them down. And what happens is it changes the way that you look at your day. It changes the way that you observe your world. And when we are grateful for what's going on around us, we can see the good in life. We can see the good in our environment. We can see the good in the world. And we can be grateful for any number of things, but we should be grateful. Gratitude is, in my mind, the key to finding out where good lives. But know where good is. Know what your good is. And celebrate it. And if you really want, to do what's best for you and those you love, share your experiences of the good with those you love. And love them. And that'll take care of it. So, gratitude. Gratitude will show you where your good lies. Spend a lifetime in gratitude, being grateful for all that you have and all that you've learned and all that you are able to do. But be grateful in specific, and you'll see. You'll see what's important, and you'll see what is good. And then spend your life and cultivate a life with those others who are good as well. Find those communities and spend time with good people. And then I think that'll help keep you on the straight and narrow. Staying on the straight and narrow requires other people. It requires accountability to someone, and you really need to have direct face-to-face contact for that, honestly. So, community is important. And that'll help keep you on the straight and narrow. But to find what's best, find the good. Well, I got one more. Oh, I don't. That's it. All right. Well, yeah, sure. We can go a little short tonight. So there we go. Just a quick Q&A chat. If you have other questions that you'd like to, you want to ask or you want me to talk about, drop me a comment. Let me know. And I'll be happy to take it up. If you want to chat on Discord, just come and pop on the Patreon. Just need $1. That'll put you on the Discord, and I'd be happy to talk with you. I've got a YouTube channel, but we're still working on getting a better URL for that. Thanks for listening. Talk to you tomorrow.